show still star-crossed. This is Season 1, Episode 1 in Fair Verona, where we lay our scene, and I was actually really looking forward to this show, and I'll tell you guys why. If you guys don't know, I'm actually a fan of Shakespeare. I know a lot of people think that, oh, Shakespeare is just as boring, it's uninteresting, I don't understand what the hell he's saying. I've kind of always been interested in his stories. I think he's a very fascinating guy. The fact that most of his stories, we don't even know if there was a real Shakespeare. You know, he was kind of this enigmatic figure, and I've always kind of been fascinated by that. And I've always liked his stories too. You know, like Midsummer Night's Dream, Macbeth. All of his stories I've always found very interesting, and one of them I've always enjoyed is Romeo and Juliet. I think it is a story that should still be read today, that really does a great job of focusing on rebellious teens and how we don't really think through of the consequences of our actions and things like that. And I think it's still a very good story for that reason, definitely. And that's one of the reasons why I think people still read it today. So when I heard about this show, that this was going to take place after Romeo and Juliet, I was totally on board because, I mean, I really do love that story. I think it's a really interesting concept, and especially after everything that goes down, I was definitely interested to see how the show would be, and I have to say, after watching this episode, if this is any indication of what the show is going to be, I'm not sure if I'm really going to like it because, at least so far, I was not a huge fan of this premiere. I thought this premiere was very bland, very fact-based, basically told us everything that we already knew, and it didn't really set up that much compelling stuff as I thought it was going to. It wasn't really original, but let's get into it, because there are things I did like. There are definitely things I did like about this premiere, and I do think it has potential to get better, but this particular episode just didn't really hook me in the way I expected it to, but let's just get into it. So we start off immediately where we see Romeo and Juliet, they're preparing to wed, and I was shocked that we started off with Romeo and Juliet alive and well. I thought the show was going to start off with both of them dead because that's what the show promised, but this first episode is basically the Romeo and Juliet story until like 20 minutes in, and basically the only people in attendance are Romeo's cousin Benvolio and Rosaline, and Rosaline and Benvolio, these are our two main characters of this show, who both object to the match. They're very much against it, and each other. They really don't like each other because, you know, one's a Capulet, one's a Montague, and Rosaline even questions why Friar Lawrence would perform the service. Like, why would he do this? I mean, this is completely wrong. You know, there's not supposed to be a Capulet and Montague wedding, and she knows that even he doesn't really believe in this, so why would he do something like this? And the friar replies he's performed far too many funerals as a result of the bitter war that rages between House Montague and House Capulet. So he basically is taking any chance he can to end this feud, and he really feels this wedding might be the key to doing that. So maybe love will succeed where violence has failed. So I thought that was a good overall scene, but the problem is, we already know all this stuff. This episode in general, for the first like 20 or so minutes, doesn't really give us any new information, and that wouldn't be a problem except that that's half of the episode, and like I said, half of it is really giving us information that we already know, and it doesn't really do anything. It doesn't add anything to the story. It just tells us things that we already kind of knew, and I expect to go in this with basically knowing new information, and there is some new stuff here that I do kind of like, but I just felt like this opening in general was just very similar to what we already know. We already know that this was kind of a wedding that was made so they could stop the feud. We already know that Romeo and Juliet secretly got married and that there was really, like, no one in attendance. We already know all this stuff, so I don't really know why this premiere felt like it needed to retell the story to us. So we then meet another new character, Prince Aeschylus, I think is how you pronounce it. He has just returned to Verona, and at the bedside of his ailing father, along with his sister, Princess Isabella, which, not the same Princess Isabel from Gallivant. I thought that immediately. It's obviously not, and the rule of Verona has just proclaimed that any man found guilty of murder within the city limits will be executed swiftly and without question. So literally anyone involved with murder, he doesn't care who they are, they're just going to be executed. That's just kind of how this is going to go, and he warns that his son, if either the Montagues or the Capulets gain the upper hand, their next target is basically going to be him. So they're going to be coming after him, and I like that he does warn him that, and Aeschylus must always protect Verona first, and those turn out to be actually his final words as the man succumbs to a mystery ailment. And I thought this was a good scene, I will say that. I didn't think this was a bad scene or anything, But this pilot in general is just a little bit confused, where it can't figure out if it tries to be like a retelling of Romeo and Juliet at first, or if it wants to give us new information. It tried to do both of them, I don't really think it worked out at the same time. It's a cool idea that you got this prince who is going to be in danger, basically, and he needs to kind of maintain order and, do something about this feud, but I just didn't feel like it worked as well as they really wanted it to. I think definitely it could have worked out very well. They could have easily made this work, but I just didn't feel like it worked as well as they really wanted to here. So, Romeo, Benvolio, and their pal Mercutio, they arrive home early in the morning and are greeted by Romeo's father, Lord, Dominio Montague, I'm just going to say Lord Montague, and he has some choice words for Benvolio, who has broken off his engagement with the daughter of a potential ally, and it appears that Benvolio would prefer to just marry for love. He wants something that is real, which obviously at the time was kind of frowned upon. I mean, back then everyone was kind of getting arranged marriages. That's one of the reasons why Romeo and Juliet are so young. I mean, because that was just a normal thing at the time. And basically, Lord Montague is counting on the match and tells Benvolio that he's brought shame upon the family. I mean, why would he ever want to marry for love? Why would he ever do something like this? I mean, he can't even look at him in the eye, because why would he even think about marrying in a way that's not for, for an arrangement? Why would he want to marry for love? And again, I do think this is a good setup. I just think it was as good as they really wanted it to be. So Lord Montague's heart-to-heart with his nephews interrupted with the news that Verona has a new leader, Prince Aeschylus, and Lord Montague sees this as an opportunity for his family since Aeschylus is young and untested as a ruler, that maybe they can use him to their advantage. But again, Aeschylus is thinking about what his father said, that, they're going to betray you and that you're going to be the one to die next. So obviously, he is, remembering that. And in a sprawling estate in another part of town, we meet Rosaline and her sister, Livia, and, this is the part of the show that I did think was kind of compelling. I did kind of like what we got here, and they wonder if their guardians, Lord and Lady Capulet, will let them attend a ball celebrating Aeschylus' ascension to the throne. And Rosaline and Livia are Lord Silvestro Capulet's nieces, his brother's daughters, and after death of their parents, their uncle actually took them in, but his wife, Lady Juliana, has made them servants, and Lord Capulet doesn't really feel that great about it, but when it comes to the household, Lady Capulet rules with an iron fist. Like, she makes sure she gets things done, and she is a very stern woman. I mean, she will do whatever she can to maintain order as best as she can, and she really doesn't put up with anything. And Lord Capulet also sees the opportunity to manage Prince Aeschylus, and since his nieces used to run the same social circle, he wants to use their connection to his advantage, because, they're both black and everything like that, so he wants to make sure that he uses that connection. All Livia really wants is to marry a rich man. That's really all she really wants in life, so he can free her and her sister and get her away from this life. And again, you can understand that. You can totally understand why Livia wants to get away. All Rosaline really wants, though, is to be a nun, so she doesn't have to answer to any man. She is very independent, and that's something I really did like about Rosaline in this episode, is that Rosaline's the only one in this episode who's not hung up on love. Like, this is someone who's like, you know what? There's more to life than love, and not everything about love is, all it's cracked up to be. That's something that Rosaline, I think, has come to realize over time, and I actually really did like that about her character. I didn't love a lot of characters here, but Rosaline definitely was the standout. Livia's a romantic, and Rosaline is very much the skeptic. Like, she's the one that's like, hey, there's a lot more to life than marriage, and, it's better to just be a nun where you can't get married than have to, forcefully marry someone where there's really no passion whatsoever. So, Lady Capulet decides to let her nieces attend. Juliet begs off, telling her mother that she's ill, and meets with Romeo to consummate their marriage, and obviously, we know what goes down there. And again, at this point, just felt like they were kind of like just crossing off things, like, oh, Juliet and Romeo have sex, need to put that in there. It didn't really feel as natural as I think they wanted it to be, and again, this is all kind of stuff we've seen before, so I didn't really feel anything here. So, as Princess Isabella and Prince Aeschylus prepare to make their grand entrance, Isabella fills her brother in on all that he's missed while away, and the fighting between the Montagues and Capulets have actually never been worse, and Isabel hopes that their father's proclamation will finally shut it down. She's hoping that finally they'll be able to put an end to this, because, Montagues and Capulets, if you guys have read the story, they've been fighting like savages for over centuries, and Aeschylus doesn't really seem as committed to upholding their father's etiquette. He kind of just wants to do his own thing, and he feels like he should be the one to do his own thing, and I can understand that. His father didn't really make an impact. Why should he? Why should he follow his father's rules if it didn't really do anything? I totally understand why he wants to do that. So I did think, again, that this was definitely a compelling arc. The problem is it's very confused of what it really wants to be at this point, especially because we aren't on the whole Romeo and Juliet situation. I just didn't feel like this was as vital as they really thought it should be. I think this would have made a lot more sense if this was after Romeo and Juliet's death, but because it's before, it just doesn't really have the impact that I think they really wanted this particular plot point to have, at least right now. So later in the streets, a fight then breaks out between Romeo, Benvolio, and Mercutio, and one of Montague's men, Tybalt, and this felt so random. Like, it was only in there because, oh, we know Tybalt dies, we have to kill him, Mercutio has to die. It didn't feel natural. It just felt like it was kind of in there because it's part of the story, and Romeo tries to play nice since they're all related now, but Tybalt is out for blood. I mean, we know Tybalt, obviously, he will do whatever he can to get his hands on Romeo and kill him, and Mercutio comes to Romeo's defense. He gets stabbed for his trouble, and Romeo then forgets his new bride, murders Tybalt, and as Mercutio dies, he utters those famous words, "A plague on both your houses." Of course, that's kind of saying, that's kind of saying up the whole idea of both your houses are cursed, and now things aren't going to get better, and that your whole family is cursed, essentially. So Juliet soon learns that not only did her beloved Romeo kill Tybalt, but her father's also decided to marry her off to a wealthy nobleman, which is Count Paris, and obviously, Juliet's not too happy about that. I mean, she wants to be with Romeo, and I thought, again, it was, it felt very random. You don't really care enough about Romeo and Juliet's characters because it all just felt so rushed and that they were just kind of fact-checking things at this point. So Prince Aeschylus isn't eager to enforce his father's law. Aeschylus is more concerned with enemies outside of Verona. The last thing he wants to do is turn one of the most powerful families against them by executing Lord Montague's only son. He just doesn't want to do that because, I mean, obviously, this is a very powerful family, and he could really use that to his advantage. I mean, they want to use Prince Aeschylus as best as they can. So why would they kill Romeo? I mean, that's just going to make them coming for him. So obviously, he doesn't want to have to do that. And Isabella then believes her brother will be perceived as weak if he doesn't punish Romeo. Like, if he doesn't do that, then obviously he's going to be considered weak. But as we know, I mean, it doesn't really mean anything because Romeo's going to die anyway, and that's why this plot just wasn't that interesting. We already know Romeo's going to die. This doesn't really add anything here. Just, this whole thing of him trying to protect Romeo, we know he's going to die anyway, so that's why this wasn't that strong, unfortunately. So Friar Lawrence gives Juliet a potion that'll put her to sleep, but it makes her seem dead. And of course, then we just get the regular story we're used to. Rosaline is sitting by Juliet's side. She takes a concoction, calls for help once Juliet's unconscious, and Romeo learns that his wife is dead. He heads to the Capulet family tomb where he finds Paris mourning Juliet. They engage in this really sexist fight over who Juliet belongs to and the extent of her chasteness before Romeo makes Paris a human shish kebab. He literally, just beats him to a pulp. It was crazy, and Romeo then drinks some poison, and with a kiss, he dies. And again, this is all stuff we expect to see. This isn't anything new. We see Juliet awakens to find her dead husband, drinks the rest of his poison, and kills herself, and Rosilane discovers all three bodies, but in a shocking twist, we realize Paris isn't actually dead, which I thought was cool. I didn't really understand that because, I mean, Romeo really literally beat this guy to a pulp. I don't know how he lived, but yeah, he's actually alive. I don't understand it either, but again, all of this is stuff that we're used to seeing. None of this really felt vital to the plot because we know Romeo and Juliet's going to die. We know, obviously, what's going to happen there. So all of this stuff we built up to really felt kind of meaningless because they're dead anyway. So where's the show really going to go from there? That was something I just wasn't really a fan of. Like I said, the first 20 minutes I really did not think was that great because we already know the story. We already knew the stakes of what was going to happen. So there really weren't any emotional stakes here. We knew things were going to get worse. We knew Romeo was going to die. We knew Juliet's going to die. Everyone knows the story of Romeo and Juliet, and this particular episode acted as if no one has ever seen this story before, and if it's all completely new information, which if they did something different, that would have been cool, but it just wasn't different enough, and they tried to incorporate, both Rosaline and Benvolio into the story, but it just didn't really add much to the story at all, and again, right now, at least, I really was not into what was going on here. I will admit, however, after this whole Romeo and Juliet situation, that's when I started to get into this plot, this pilot a bit more. I did think that it did get better as it went on, because we see a grief-stricken Lady Capulet, who already, like I said, is very, just very emotionally abusive towards Rosaline and, towards Rosaline and towards Livia, and she decides to emotionally and verbally abuse Rosaline as she dresses her for Juliet's funeral. The two argue. Rosaline accused Lady Capulet for being jealous of her and Livia's mother, and it seems like Capulet was actually in love with her brother's husband but wanted the title, so she actually married the elder Montague brother instead, and the accusation leaves a mark, and Lady Capulet promises to make Rosaline's life more of a living hell than it already is, because, I mean, Rosaline just revealed this huge thing, and obviously she doesn't want her to be any part of that, so there's definitely going to be a lot of tension between those two. But I do think this is set up pretty well, that, basically she was in love with her husband's brother, and she married Elder Montague, so she could just get that title. I think it's interesting. So, and I mean, it really does show what these people are willing to do, for fortune over actual, love. They want superficial love that's just kind of for convenience rather than love that's actually straight up love. That's something that really only Benvolio wants. So Lord Montague goes to see Friar Lawrence. It turns out that Montague actually wanted his son and Juliet to fall in love. He even orchestrated a little behind-the-scenes matchmaking, and he also knew about the marriage. Like, he wanted this to go down, and Montague hopes of strengthening his house with Capulet blood, and if Juliet supplying an heir are dashed, and he blames the friar. So obviously, he wanted Juliet and Benvolio to get together, and he did everything he could to make sure that happened, and the fact that that didn't happen obviously very much did anger him. And again, I thought this was interesting. I don't think we originally knew this in the story, so I thought that whole part was interesting too. So the family decided to throw a dual funeral, which would seem like a really bad idea under the best of circumstances, obviously. But Aeschylus feels that, hey, I don't have to protect Romeo anymore. Let's just try to play peacemaker, because now I don't have to worry about protecting Romeo and making sure I don't kill him. Now that he's dead, I don't really have to do anything. So he tries to play peacemaker, and he announces that Lord Montague has commissioned a statue of Juliet. When he unveils it, the word harlot is emblazoned across the figure in red paint, and this, of course, incites a riot, because a harlot back then was, like, considered a slut or something like that, and obviously this starts this whole feud between the Montagues and Capulets, but unfortunately, you just don't really feel the tension here. It feels like such a secondary conflict when it should be the main conflict, but it just doesn't feel that way because they didn't show enough of it. They didn't devote enough time to that family. Yes, we heard a lot about it, but I didn't really feel like you really did feel that tension here, unfortunately. So Rosaline decides it's time for her and Livia to leave Verona. I mean, it's time. It's not a safe place to be anymore. They have to get out of there. So she steals some of Lady Capulet's jewels to subside their journey, which I don't know why she would do that. I mean, Lady Capulet, she's already not on good terms with her. I get, obviously, she wanted to make sure that this would help them on their journey and get them money and shit, but Livia's upset to learn that Rosaline has been privy to all the inside dirty deeds regarding Romeo and Juliet, and she never really told her. I mean, she was there for basically everything, and she never really let Livia in on it. So Livia also doesn't just want to straight up leave the city. I mean, why would she want to do that? And she wants a good marriage to a good man who will take care of them both. Again, she is convinced that she will get a man who will take them out of this life and just give them a better life overall. But Rosaline is willing to do it on her own. And again, I thought that comparison between the two was really the strongest thing of this episode, is those two characters. And Livia's sole interest is becoming a Mrs. Livia, and she tells Rosaline she can run, but she will be running alone. She's just not going to come with her. I mean, they want completely different things, and I did think they very well showed the difference between Rosaline and Livia. They both want very different things. They kind of both different ways than the other one does, which I thought, again, was highlighted very well here. So their fight is quickly put on hold when Rosaline is summoned by Prince Aeschylus, and on her way, her carriage is attacked as allies of the two families continue to fight in the streets, and she's rescued by Benvolio, but she's anything but grateful. Remember, these two really don't like each other at all. They want completely different things, and they really want nothing to do with each other. Again, they're from dueling families. I mean, why would they want anything to do with each other, especially at a time like this? And she blames Benvolio for the whole thing, which I don't really understand. Benvolio, yeah, he was supposed to be with Juliet, but he didn't cause any of this. Like, I don't really understand why she's blaming Benvolio. That didn't make much sense to me. And she thinks that he should have either calmed Tybalt or killed the man himself, which I get it. I get it that obviously she's very hostile and we have to understand why, but I just didn't really understand it. Like, what would that have really done? Killing Tybalt still would have had the same outcome. People still would have been out for Benvolio, and he still probably would have been executed. And this same feud probably would have still been going on over Benvolio. I mean, we know how much Lord Montague wanted Benvolio and Juliet together. So if Benvolio was killed, he absolutely would start a war. So it really would not have made all that much of a difference, and I don't really understand why Rosilane wanted that. It seemed like this was only there so they could give us a reason why Rosilane had this hatred for Benvolio and why she wanted nothing to do with him. And I just didn't feel like it was really that strong, unfortunately. So Rosilane arrives at the palace to discover her uncle, Lord Montague, and Benvolio waiting for her, and all the men have cooked up a scheme to marry Rosilane off to Benvolio. Now, he's caught off guard because he agreed to marry someone, just not Rosilane. Like, of course he wants to be someone, but it's not Rosilane. He doesn't have those feelings for Rosilane. He wants to be with someone he genuinely loves, and they think that this is the best way to restore peace and protect Verona from outside enemies. Thing is, you just fucking tried this with Romeo and Juliet, and it didn't work, so why would it work now? I don't really understand. And Rosilane, being the independent one that she is, does run off because she doesn't want this at all, and Prince Aeschylus then takes off after her, and a flashback reveals that the two were once romantically involved, but things actually end up abruptly after Rosilane's father was killed by a Montague, and Aeschylus left Verona, which I thought this was a good twist. I like that we know that these two are actually had some sort of a connection. But if it's setting up what I think it's going to be really dumb. I'll get into that in a little bit, but Aeschylus swears that he thought he was doing Rosilane a solid since she'd get back some of what she'd lost, and he also explains that Verona cannot be a city divided, no matter what the cost. There's just no way. They need to find a way to unite these two families. But Aeschylus is also still sweet on Rosilane. I mean, he still has feelings for her, and he offers to give her whatever she wants, and the two share this really steamy kiss. They pull away, but Benvolio sees enough to know something is definitely going on. He knows that something rotten is definitely happening, and there's definitely something that he definitely does not know about, and that's not the ending, though. We see Livia. She discovers Lady Capulet attending to Count Paris, and Livia doesn't know who she is, but she knows that she's dying, and Livia actually took care of her mother during her illness, so she knows what dying does look like, or she tells Lady Capulet, and Livia offers her help, and Lady Capulet accepts on the condition that Livia keep it a secret, and that is the way this episode ends. Let's just get in this episode and talk about really where I think this pilot went wrong. So when it comes to a show like this, the cast is very vital. This is a huge cast, and there are a lot of people in here, and I have to say, the majority of the cast really didn't stick out to me that much. I thought everyone was kind of just fine here. There wasn't anyone who was absolutely incredible, except for two actresses. Lashana Lynch as Rosilane immediately stuck out to me, and for good reason. I mean, she is the main character of the show, and you're really supposed to feel that presence within her. You know, she is a very independent nature. That's just kind of who she is, and I really did like that. And I like that she isn't relying on men. Like, she really wants this to be an independent thing, and she feels that she can get this, you know, make her escape without having to marry anyone, and I think that's a very good mentality to have. Is it realistic? I'm not so sure. Not in this time period, especially. I don't think it's very realistic. But I did think she did a really good job. She really did keep me hooked in throughout most of the show, and I really did like her character. And I like I said, she is pretty much independent throughout a lot of the show. The thing that did bother me a bit is her more sassy, sort of holistic attitude. I felt like that was really only there so I could be like, oh, she's such a badass. Oh, she's such a badass. But I wasn't really feeling the way. I felt like it didn't really go with the other part of her character. The part of her character that feels for Benvolio doesn't really go with anything else. I just kind of felt like that was there because this is why she's so hostile. And just because a character is hostile doesn't mean they're good. They have to have a reason why they're hostile, and I just didn't really like that hostility really needed to be there. I think she was just a little bit too much of a savage, and I think they really did overdo it just a little bit with her being independent, but I did like her character, though. Overall, she definitely did do a good job, and out of everyone, I think she definitely was the standout here. And unfortunately, like I said, everyone else in the show is kind of just fine. Wade Briggs as Benvolio, I thought was good. I didn't think he was anything bad. Like, again, I like that his character wants, you know, true love and things like that, and he really does want something real. I think that definitely is interesting. I really did like Prince Aeschylus. I thought Sterling Suleiman did a really good job as Prince Aeschylus. You can tell he's really not doing things the way his father did. He is a new character, actually. He's not a character that's been seen before, which I thought was really cool. I like that he actually is a new character. We haven't really seen this character before, and I think overall he definitely is very interesting so far, and I'm wondering to see what his real purpose is going to be here. Now, I'm worried that these three are going to be in this love triangle, and I really don't want that to happen. I feel like it's going to happen because it's Shonda Rhimes, but I just feel it's really unnecessary to this show. We'll really have to see what ends up happening there. I like the character of Livia, I really do, but Ebony Noel just didn't leave much of an impression on me. A lot of her lines were very wooden. She kind of said them all the same, and that kind of goes for a lot of the actors here. They were fine, but I just didn't really feel what they wanted me to. It felt like these were just random actors. There wasn't really anything that amazing about them, and maybe they're gonna get better. Maybe this was just like a sort of a rocky start for them because it was such a big cast, but because of how good Lashonda Lynch really is as Rosaline, the rest of the cast unfortunately doesn't really hold up as well and don't really hold a candle to her, and that definitely is a problem when you have such a big boisterous cast throughout the show. So now let's get to the directing and the writing, because that's where I think the main flaw with the show comes in. The directing here, I think, is fine. It is definitely very dark. It feels very cautionary. It's kind of like a medieval tale, and then at times it tries to be like Game of Thrones, and I don't really understand why I tried to go in that direction. It's Shakespeare. Don't make it like Game of Thrones. It seems like every single fantasy or something that takes place in not now, it takes place in like the 17th century, tries to be like Game of Thrones, and this did at times too, and I don't really think it worked out that well. When it tries to be just a compelling character drama, though, I think it actually worked pretty well. I was definitely into a lot of the smaller scenes here. I thought definitely that was a little bit more interesting, and I thought the directing really wasn't bad. The writing is really the main problem here. Like I said, this essentially felt like two very distinctly different pilots. One being a prequel to Romeo and Juliet, and, kind of showing what happens up to them dying and everything like that, and I think it's fine, but we've seen that story done a million times, and this really made it seem like it was going to be something very different. And it is for the most part something relatively different than what you've seen before. Unfortunately, it didn't really turn into something different until much later on. Once we started to focus less on Romeo and Juliet, then it actually started to get good. Unfortunately, I feel like it should have just started that way, because I felt like all the Romeo and Juliet stuff was really unnecessary, and especially because we're seeing it through flashbacks anyway. Why did we really need a 20-minute prologue of like Romeo and Juliet? I didn't really understand the way that was done. You could have still done the Prince Aeschylus stuff. You could have still done everything the same way. You just didn't really need Romeo and Juliet in the story. I don't really feel like we needed to see them here, and the actors left no impression on me, because I just kind of felt like they were just there because they needed to be there. They did the things that they need to do. Oh, we needed the Tybalt fight. We needed the death scene. We needed the marriage scene. And I just felt like this was here because, it happened Romeo and Juliet, therefore we need to have it here. It didn't really feel like it was a vital part of the story, and that just didn't really work to me. But once the story did actually get going, then I was into it. This whole idea of them wanting to resolve things through this marriage is ridiculous. I will say that right now. It doesn't make a ton of sense, because they literally tried that with Romeo and Juliet, and it didn't work out so well. So what makes them think it's going to work with Rosilane and Benvolio? I don't really know. The fact that Rosilane doesn't really want it, though, that is a more intriguing element that I think is going to help the show out a little bit more. I do think the show did kind of, it did kind of take some losses when it comes to some chances it could have taken. I mean, especially because the cast is interracial, which I think is a really cool idea, that most of the cast here is interracial. Half of them are white, half of them are black. All the Montagues are, I believe, white, and all the Capulets are black. I think is a really cool idea. Problem is with that, while I do think that is, like I said, a very cool idea, they didn't do what they could have done. I think they easily could have made this like a race situation. Like, maybe those two sides hate each other because of their race. The Montagues wanted to go to the Capulets because of their race, and I think it just would have made for a much more compelling show. I mean, you have that opportunity to have this sort of like racism situation go on. Why not address it? I don't know why they didn't go into more territory with that. I think it just would have made the show something different. And sure, I didn't want it to be overly preachy or anything, But I really felt like they could have taken a chance with that, and I'm surprised they didn't go in that direction. I think it would have made the most sense to do something like that because, again, it hasn't been seen before. A lot of what we saw here is things we've seen before. Romeo wanting to be with Juliet, Juliet, going to this other guy, Romeo roughing up anyone that gets in Juliet's way, him killing Tybalt. This is all stuff we really did see before. The whole storyline of Prince Aeschylus was kind of pointless in this episode because now he has no one to protect. Now he's just going to go after Rosaline, I guess, and I guess that's going to be his main storyline. Just a lot of what we got here is stuff we have seen before, and I just don't really think it worked as well as they really wanted it to. However, from a visual perspective, this show definitely is not, something to fault with, because the visuals here are phenomenal. I think it really does look fantastic. You really are transported back into that time. The costumes are right. Nothing really feels out of place. Visually, this show is stunning, and it is fantastic to look at, and it's very hard to take you out of the moment. Unfortunately, everything that's going on beyond those visuals just aren't as interesting. I felt like they were merely using these visuals as kind of a way to disguise that this show isn't that great, and that is kind of the case, that it's really not that great. The score was fine. I thought that the show in general, it definitely did drag significantly. The first 20 minutes were extremely rushed, but it was also very boring because I just didn't care. I've seen this story a million times, and I just want to get to the new stuff. I don't want to see a prologue of Romeo and Juliet. I don't need that. What they could have easily done is like a 5-minute narration where Rosaline explains what's going on, or like Benvolio explains. I didn't need this, 20-minute exposition thing that they had, because that's what a lot of this was a lot of exposition. I just didn't really think it needed to be there. Overall, guys, still Starcross was just okay. It didn't capture my attention the way I really hoped it would, but there are enough things in there for me to say I'm definitely going to check out next week, because I do think this is an interesting premise, and I really do hope they don't get it wrong. And I can't really say they did here because, again, this was kind of all stuff I've seen before, so I'm hoping that the next few episodes are something original, something that we really haven't seen, and actually is a new story, because that's really what I want to see here. I don't want to see Romeo and Juliet 2.0. I want to see something that we really haven't seen before that really does follow that story. So overall, like I said, I wasn't really impressed by this first episode, and I am going to give Still Starcross Season 1, Episode 1, in Fair Verona, where we lay our scene, a 2.5 out of 5, or a C. So over, guys, remember, you Still Starcross. Let me know what you guys thought of this episode overall. Left your thoughts on it. Do you like the show? Are you going to stick with it? Again, I most likely am going to stick around with the show. I basically have to, because I'm going to tell you guys now, I've started this rule where if I start a show for you guys, I have to finish it. No matter what it is, I'm going to finish it, because I'm tired of reviewing shows and then getting so behind and, watching 3 episodes and then stopping. I don't want to do that anymore. The show's 7 episodes. I really don't have a problem with that. That is literally nothing. I can get it done, and I will probably be reviewing every episode, so look forward to that. But that's my review. Hope you guys enjoyed. We'll see you guys in my next video, which will be for the season finale of The Americans, which I am so hyped for, and we'll see you guys for that. Okay, bye.